everyone, welcome to Better Tech. So today we have Ansi with us, and before we were, starting to discuss about the topic and everything, and Ansi was telling me a story about her name. So Ansi, welcome to Better Tech. First of all, thank you very much for taking time out.
Thanks for having me.
So before we jump into the topic, can you tell us briefly something about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Anne-Sybille. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Formance, a fintech startup in the payment space. I'm the former CEO of Haseeb, another startup, but in the cybersecurity space. And we scaled from 3 to 100 people until last year, as we sold the company to a large US cybersecurity vendor. And here I am in the payment space, starting a new journey from scratch again.
All right. So, cybersecurity and payments, these are like two completely different things. So how did it happen? From cybersecurity, you jumped into fintech. What was the thought behind it?
Yeah, really good question. So I've been working this 4-5 past year in cybersecurity. And as I just explained, we grew the company from inception to acquisition. And we operated in the B2B tech cybersecurity space. And for me, it was a great way to understand how to build a tech startup from scratch, a software company. And now with this new company in the payment space, it's almost the same mechanics, I would say. The topic is different, but at the end of the day, starting a new project from scratch, so making sure to have your first user customers, so love your product. I think it's the same way of working on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So, Ansi, you have been into YC as well, right? So can you tell our listeners a bit more about your experience while you were at the YC? How did it help you? Was it beneficial, or how did you get selected? Why did you thought to be a part of YC?
Sure. So we got accepted to YC last summer. And it was actually my co-founder, Clément, who participated in this program. And the overall feedback about YC is that it's a great way to kickstart a project, especially as you can leverage a huge network of experts, of former founders all over the world. And even today, I know that when we have some specific questions about payment or about, how to hire your first employee, we can knock at the door of YC partners, but also YC alumni. And the doors are always open, and it's a great way to be supported when you're building a company.
Awesome. So about your company, Formance, I believe, can you tell us more about that? What this is all about? What's the product? What's your sort of, perfect customer? What sort of services are you offering, or what the product is all about?
Yeah. So we actually started the project and founded the company last year. So again, with my co-founder, Clément. So a few words about Formance. So we are a fintech startup, and we develop an open source solution for fintech companies, marketplaces, and platforms to actually enable their tech teams to build and track all types of money flows on a solid foundation called financial ledger. And just maybe to be clear, at this point on where we stand in the payment value chain, because it's not that obvious. So we don't do payment processing. We sit between payments and payouts. So let's say, for instance, or food delivery application, and you use Stripe and Formance. Stripe will enable you to
make the payment.
Yeah, exactly. And process online payments and receive, for instance, $30 from an order. And only then, Formance will step in and break down the amount received between the different stakeholders of the order. So, for instance, $20 for the restaurant, $5 for the restaurant. Yeah. And maybe, one last thing about Formance, it's that today most of what's happening between pay and payouts is built in-house. So engineering teams spend a lot of time building themselves these money flows, and the where they are ventilated, as there is no off-the-shelf solution for complex and specific money flows today. That's why we are targeting this specific segment.
Sure. And I mean, within this space, we have actually seen exponential growth in the last few years, right? So there is like you can say a rapid growth in the electronic payment methods. So how would you see that happening? I mean, do you think that COVID basically fueled it, or there were some other factors?
Yeah. So completely. So the payment industry has obviously always been moving forward quite quickly. And of course, since the pandemic, which impacted drastically online payments, first in boosting existing payment trends, but also in fostering new ones. And as we all know, payments are becoming increasingly cashless. So I can give you here one shocking figure. I came across in a quite recent PwC study to grasp the order of magnitude of this trend. So they said that the volume of global cashless payment is expected to double in 5 years between the beginning of the pandemic and 2025, and to triple by 2030. And so I think that this rapid growth is in electronic payments is both the consequence of payment innovation, but also the cause, which is still, I think, fueling new payment solutions and infrastructures.
So what are the customers' expectations against this, rapid growth? So when, an industry is growing, customers basically many times, they basically shift their expectations as well. Like for cash-based payments, they have different expectations, maybe a different experience. Similarly, for cashless payments, as you have said, the expectations would be different. So how you have seen this paradigm shift?
Yeah. So if we deep dive into the specificities of the customer expectations regarding payments and the overall experience with online payments, I would say that there are three main drivers here which impacts the payment industry. The first one is quite obvious, but it's about having the choice of the payment method used for a specific transaction. So now we reached a point where it's not only about having the choice, but it's about having a broad range of payment options, which tend to cover the whole spectrum of the customer's needs and preferences. And if we look at the main and last trends related to payment method, we can name a few ones here. We heard a lot recently of the technologies and companies behind the buy now, pay later solutions to be able to pay in several installments. For instance, with a solution such as Klarna. Customers also want to have the possibility to pay with their preferred method, depending on the country, on their own country, or where they make the purchase. So, for instance, in the Netherlands, most customers prefer the local online payment solution Ideal, which has spread all over the country in recent years. Whereas in France, cards still dominate the online payment market. And we also see more and more the option to pay with an in-app wallet, which allows customers to use their wallet at checkout and for payments. So this is the first. Yeah, I'm good.
Please finish your thought.
Yeah, because I was thinking of two other drivers. I can go through them quite quickly.
Sure.
I think so. Moving on the second main customer expectation, I think that beyond wanting to have the choice when it comes to payment method, customers also expect to have all-in-one experiences when making purchases and payments. And the direct consequence of that is the emergence of what we call embedded financial services. And put simply, it's the integration of financial services or tools within the product of services of non-financial organizations. So, for instance, a marketplace which offers short-term loans in the form of buy now, pay later. And the last key customer expectation we see like more and more when we talk to our user customers, and this trend is taken more and more seriously and taken also into account by online application, is consumer consciousness. So put simply, the idea behind is that every buying decision a consumer makes has the power to change the world a little, can have a positive impact, for instance, on the environment or on the access to application. I have two examples in mind. For instance, Green Dot, a French green neobank founded, I think, 2 years ago, in order to facilitate investment in the ecological transition for everybody. And I can give you another example as well. I have in mind Swile, the famous platform for employee benefit. They launched in the midst of the pandemic, so in 2020, an option to donate meal vouchers in just a few weeks. And concretely, once the option is activated, the system automatically runs up and gives a difference to the association of the user choice.
Right. So, I mean, you touched upon a very important thing about like globalization as well. Like, I mean, these startups that you talked about, these are like in different parts of the world, right? So do you think that these innovations which are happening in this fintech and payments space, I mean, these are not globalized or standardized globally yet. So what are your thoughts on that? What you have seen like in your experience working with various customers in Formance, that how this is coming along? I mean, is it getting standardized or it's like, I mean, all over the place?
Yeah. Great question also. So I think that here it was mentioning the role of the regulatory framework and the implementation of standards within the payment space. And for instance, with the implementation of technical norms and standards, if we mention one measure which has been enacted a few years ago, it's the norm ISO 2022, adopted in 2018. And it's basically a developed methodology for transmitting data, which provides a consistent messaging standard for payments. And of course, there is also there's also the European directive, which has been, I think, voted a few years ago in Europe, with the okay, I just forgot the name in English, which is the Payment Services Directive 1, voted, I think it was around 15 years ago, and the PST2 voted a few years later,
Sure.
which actually prompted the adoption of online banking tools and strengthen online shopping security. And here it's quite interesting because it was the first time that we saw some kind of uniformization and this kind of, let's say, measure taken within the European space to make sure that more innovations are generated around payments. As these two directives, and it's quite important to mention that with this, customers can now utilize, for instance, third-party providers for more convenient and safe banking services.
Sure. So, I mean, what sort of attraction have you seen with respect to Formance and your competitors? I mean, is your product getting the traction? Are more and more people shifting to your product? What sort of challenges they were facing earlier? So in general, how is the market responding to tools similar to Formance or specifically Formance?
Okay. So maybe just as mentioned at the very beginning, so at Formance, we provide an open source and modular solution to build and track and manage money flow specific to a business model, strategy, and a specific development. So maybe just to be clear at this point, so the solution can be used by all types of money-moving businesses, such as insurtech companies, health tech companies, but we're targeting in priority fintech companies with more and more investing apps using the solution, but also marketplaces, as we experienced an organic traction on this segment with strong use cases and our first user. So here, I think the key selling point at the moment for us is first the fact that, as I mentioned, we are targeting a segment in the payment value chain for which there is no off-the-shelf solution, meaning that today they have to build everything in-house. The second selling point, which is also critical for us and for users, is the fact that we developed our own programming language to model complexity, meaning that the solution is flexible and modular enough to model all types of money flows, whatever the complexity, specificity, revenue model, etc. And the last key point here, and it's quite new in the payment space, and it's also a key selling point for users, the fact that our solution is open source, meaning that they have access to the source code of our solution, and they can tweak the code, the source code, the way they want. And it's also a proof of solidity of the solution, as we all know that when a product is open source, it's continuously used, improved, etc., etc.
Right. So, I mean, in the end, what are your goals and vision for Formance moving forward? I mean, where do you want to see the company? Are you sort of planning for another acquisition or exit, or what?
Yeah, so we just started the company. So there is no plan of acquisition or IPO at the moment, even if, of course, that still we want to grow the company as far as we can. And maybe just to conclude, so regarding the vision and the goals for Formance, so our vision is to actually empower money-moving businesses with the essential toolkit to build and to manage the money flow, which will make them and their users grow and win. Meaning the flow which will support and materialize more features, payment scenarios, and options to delight their customers, also on the one hand, and on the other hand, the flows which will improve their economics and revenues.
Right. So in the end, I mean, any last thoughts on Formance in general or related to a topic for payments, fintech, etc.?
Yeah. So maybe let me think about that. I think it's important to point and to highlight here the fact that this industry is still maturing, meaning that we saw the first key players, meaning the payment service providers of this industry, which were created 10, 20 years ago. So Stripe, PayPal, Adyen, etc. Yeah. And now we can see that there is a lot of new segments, new players trying to fill the gaps and the needs of this payment value chain, which is getting more and more complex, mature, and strategic. So I think that it's a good timing to create a fintech company in 2021 and 2022, and I guess in 2023.
All right. So Ansi, once again, thank you very much for your time today. And I really look forward to, host you on another session. And it was like a very nice conversation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.